Janice. Welcome to the Malaysians on the Move podcast. So Janice is my friend. I met her during my A levels at Taylor's College. What year was that? 2009, right? Yeah. So we've been friends for like 15 years and we've kept in touch over the years. And you're now based in Australia, Janice. Welcome.
Hi, Yoshnee. I'm really excited to be on this podcast. I was really stoked when you started it, and I was kind of wondering, oh, when is Yoshnee going to reach out to me to ask about my experience? So I'm really glad that we're doing this.
Yeah, Janice, so excited to have you on. I was wondering if you'd be willing to maybe introduce yourself a little bit more, talk about your upbringing in Malaysia, and finally, landing in the UK for your engineering degree.
Yep, certainly. So I guess for everyone listening, my name is Janice Siew. I grew up in KL. I think a very normal childhood per se. Lived in the Klang Valley area. Went to actually a Chinese school for primary school. So after high school, I went to do my A levels at Taylor's College. That's where I met Yoshnee. And really, I think a big part of what influenced my decision to study in the UK was actually a lot of family pressure, if you might call it. Growing up, my dad has always talked about there'd be better opportunities overseas. I think his view at the time was the economic opportunities in Malaysia weren't very good. So that's what I heard from him growing up, and it was always kind of on the cards to want to study abroad. I'm quite fortunate that my dad was able to save quite a fair bit of money to afford sending me and my brothers overseas to study. But a lot of my childhood was, I would say, nothing out of the ordinary. Went to school, came home, did some tuition classes. I tried to excel academically. I think I got to a point where I was very good at studying, but not much else. And honestly, when choosing what to study abroad, I had no idea what to do. So I grew up among obviously a lot of very similar ambition people who say, study science, doctor, lawyer, engineer. I went, don't want to be a doctor. I'm scared of blood. I'm not very good at talking at the time, so not a lawyer. I'm good at math. I'm good at physics. So literally, that was the only thing that really helped me land on what I chose or applied to study. And I ended up studying mechanical engineering in UCL. So it wasn't very complex or very profound kind of journey. I just kind of went, I guess I'm good at these two subjects, so I must be able to do mechanical engineering. And when I did that degree, I think I slowly found out that that's actually a lot more to engineering than just math and physics. You have to have a design mind. You really, want to build machines to better, how humans live. A lot of my peers wanted to design cars and engines and work for, in the F1 circuit, for example. And I quickly realized that, well, that's not actually what I want to do, but I still just studied hard at it and graduated. So, yeah, that's that part of that story.
Yeah, because oftentimes we think that, oh, if you're good in math and physics, you'll do well in engineering, but the job actually is not the same. You're not going to be doing math and physics problems at your job. And so, yeah, I can understand how when you started the degree, you were just going with the flow, but then by the end of it, you realized that, oh, this doesn't really lie with my interests. How was it like for you with the degree though? Did you have a hard time or you breezed through it? And once you found out that this wasn't something you wanted to continue with as a career, what did you do then?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I breezed through it. I think mechanical engineering is quite a difficult degree. I really only got through, by making friends in my cohort. We would study together, exchange notes. So there was a lot of study going on. I think the pivotal point for me, and it's a funny story I still tell, is when I was doing my third year project. I was in the lab for long hours at a stretch, running experiments. There was one day I was there from noon to midnight, and it's an underground lab. And my experiment was light controlled, so I had no natural light. And I was just sitting there and realizing the time. And I was so tired, but my mind just went to strange places. And I was thinking, well, if the biochemistry lab next door were doing experiments and they had a zombie, and if that zombie broke out, this is where I would die. I wouldn't be able to escape. And I think that really set in for me that this was not the trajectory I wanted for my career at the time. So that's when I got out. I finished my third year, and then I got an internship with Accenture. And that's when I went, maybe this could be something. And then I subsequently applied for a master's in management in London to change that major. So I guess that feeling was always there, but being in that lab and that experience helped me realize that this wasn't the path I wanted to go on.
Got it. And so after you finish your master's, you said in management, did you aspire to continue living in the UK and you wanted to get a job more aligned to, I guess, joining the corporate world essentially, right?
Yeah, I think this was just an evolution of me trying to discover what's out there and what I might gel with. So the whole change to the master's in management course was to, in a way, buy me time, but also give me a whole different set of skills because I would come out just as an engineering graduate. I still, at the time, I don't think I could really say that I knew exactly what it was that I wanted as a career. I was just still trying things out, really. Um, and from that upbringing that I still had, I still very much had that in me that, oh, I should find a job in London. I should try to stay abroad because the opportunities are better. So that was really the driving thinking at the time. And when I landed my first job, it was again also almost by chance. I had interviewed for various management consultancies, even tried to explore investment banking. And by chance, a recruiter reached out to me about this role in a tech company. I interviewed, I kind of liked the people, and I thought, why not? This could be interesting. And that's how I started my career in London.
Would you say that by the time you started your career in London, you felt pretty assimilated to living in London?
I would describe it as a period of a lot of change. In some ways, yes, I felt that I've made more friends through my undergrad and my postgrad. So by the time I landed my first job, it also helped that actually there was a cohort of new joiners around the same time that I did. So I had peers. So in that regard, yes, but anything outside of my work or student life, I don't think so. I still felt very much in the bubble of foreign student, just trying to find a job in London. When it came to the local culture, I mean there was heaps of drinking involved. The pub culture or anything else local to London, I don't really know. I still feel in many ways not as integrated, but in some other ways that I have. But also just taking a step back, London is such a melting pot of experiences and people from all over the place. So I think I inhibited a little slice of that. But if I was, the moment I left London, for example, and would travel in the UK, it was again a very weird place to be, just from the general like English kind of culture.
You said that you started at a tech company. How many years were you working there for?
So that's an interesting question. So I worked with this company in their London office for about 2.5 years. And at the 2 years and a half mark, that's actually when there was an opportunity to move with the company to Australia, to
Oh,
start their presence in Australia. when I first started, there was rumors of this, possibly happening in the future. We just had a sales presence open in Australia. So we've always thought, at some point they're going to need people there. Maybe that could be an opportunity. So when that time came, I was at a stage where I was thinking, if I stayed here a little bit more, I might as well just apply for the permanent residency in UK and continue on. Or I could explore this. I'm still young. I want to experience living in another country other than London or the UK. So it was with that company opportunity that brought me to Sydney, Australia, where I still am right now.
Yeah, that's excellent. And so essentially when you got to Australia or specifically Sydney in Australia, um, that's like you starting from scratch. Did you know anybody? Did you have like a few friends who were already based there? How did you start to, build community and assimilate?
I would say that I was, yes, almost starting from scratch, and I say almost because I didn't know of some of the connections that I had in Australia, mainly through family. Father's side had a cousin who moved here ages ago, living in Melbourne situation. So it wasn't very, it wasn't as if I had a huge base that I could immediately plug into. I did feel like I was starting from scratch in Sydney. I had a friend who had some family here in Sydney. So when he heard that I was moving here, he just offered to set up that introduction to this uncle and auntie. And throughout my whole time here, I'm now living in Sydney for 8 years. They are still friends, I would say, although I would still call them uncle and auntie. They really helped me settle down. I stayed with them for the first month or so until I could find my own proper accommodation, for example. And any time in between when I had to move between places and was out of a place, they would have me over. I'll stay with them. They invite me for their Christmas parties, birthdays, all that sort of stuff. So that gave me some place to start.
I see. And would you say that when you got there and like as the months kept going, you felt that Sydney was a better fit for you than London?
I think over time, yes. So for context, I was in London in my early 20s. I think it was a great city for that self exploration. You have so many different people coming to one place. It's very exciting. Things move very fast. Businesses start um, everywhere, and London has that. It's very fast paced, whereas Sydney, by the time I came here, I was in my late 20s, and the lifestyle here is more focused on healthy living, outdoors, a bit slower pace than London, I would say. Also depends on which company you work for, ultimately. But I think it was just a huge. It was just a very different environment. When people ask me which which city do I prefer, London or Sydney, I'm just like they're apples and oranges. They offer very different experiences. So it depends on what kind of person you are and what do you want to enjoy. I'm still living here in Sydney because I've really taken on to that outdoor lifestyle. I love the beach. I dive. I surf. I do all those things. So that's why now for me, London is not as appealing because I have this sort of lifestyle.
Yeah, specifically you got like scuba diving certificates and now you just like dive, right? Like you're a free diver.
Yes, that's a huge passion of mine now. I started with scuba diving, and I think it's just from my childhood when my parents and I and my family go on holiday. We go to a beach resort, and I just like playing in the beach. And when I came to Australia, I was just thinking, hey, there's the Great Barrier Reef. That would be a pretty cool thing to see, and to see that properly, maybe I'll need to learn how to scuba dive. So that was the starting point. And around COVID, I think one of the local businesses started and tried to introduce people to the sport of freediving. So that's when I started learning. And it's been a couple years now, and I've got pretty good at it. So that's really helped me also get gelled in with the community around here. I think first moving to Sydney, I did find it hard to make friends. And it seems to be a common experience for a lot of expats who move here, not just from Malaysia, from everywhere else. So a lot of people here find that making friends through sports is a good way to do that. And I tried different things. I tried joining run clubs to do that. I did meet eventually some friends that I gel with, but it's I think to me through my free diving because when you dive, you always need a buddy to go with,
Oh,
so it's safe in the ocean. There's someone else there who can help you out if you run into any trouble, and vice versa. So a lot of people looking for dive buddies. A lot of people like me who had just learned this new sport. So that's kind of where it started. Now I'm part of so many WhatsApp chat groups organizing dives everywhere. That's how I've managed to actually make friends here.
I mean, I think it's no secret that it's easier to find community through shared interests because you have like an anchor to build on. And now I don't know if your job is remote, but if you have a remote job, it's harder to build connections at work. So you really have to rely on like hobbies and interests. And I'm really glad that you found one. And that's also like a very niche one because you don't really hear about a lot of people free diving. I guess it depends where you live also because like in big cities you don't really have access to that. I had a dumb question though. So when you dive, how long underwater can you breathe for?
So in freediving, just holding my breath and not moving. That would be look something like 3 minutes plus of holding my breath.
Wow, that is admirable. That's exceptional. Oh my God. I didn't know that. Okay.
You can do it too, because the world record for this is about 10 plus minutes. So and diving down, the furthest I've dived down is about 28 meters on a single breath, and that dive takes me about 1 minute and 10 seconds.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay. And there are training methods to improve or increase your lung capacity.
Yes, yes, there are definitely training you can do to better handle, what we call in freediving the urge to breathe, the urge to exhale all your air. There are ways to increase your tolerance to carbon dioxide buildup and increase your oxygen capacity. So, yes.
Got it. What's the most memorable free dive that you've ever done thus far?
Oh gosh, there's so many because I'm constantly free diving every chance I can get. I I would say it was a trip to this place called the Kilsby Sinkhole. It's in Australia, and it was just beautiful conditions, really calm. It's not one of those other diving that I do that's more to look out for marine animals, which is amazing. Humpback whales and sharks and things like that. That particular was memorable for me because that was the first time I was able to reach, 20 plus meters on my dives. That was something that I struggled with a lot. And even starting this new sport, people now look at my photos and videos and go, wow, that's so amazing. And you look, like a dancer underwater, like effortless. And I'm like, well, it was a lot of effort to actually get there. So in that dive, I had instructors with me who gave me tips and helped me get into the flow, I suppose, to help me achieve that depth.
I'm actually visualizing all the pictures that I've seen on Instagram, and I'm also just like picturing you participating in this sport. And Like I can actually feel that passion and how something like this can be so fulfilling to somebody's life. Like when you talked about seeing marine animals and stuff, I like pictured you like swimming with fishes, and I'm like, this is what life is about. And I don't know, just the way you were speaking about it, and I was visualizing your pictures because I've seen them. Yeah, I gotta say it's a unique one. It's very lovely to see that you've come so far with it. Because yeah, 3 minutes is just insane, man. That's all I have to say. Because I swim, and my sister and I, we used to like try to hold our breaths underwater and see who could like do it the longest, and it's like 15 seconds and we're up, you know. So, but obviously that was like many years ago, but still. Not to switch course, but just going back a little bit to your career, you came to Australia because you transferred internally within the same company. And so, do you think now you found your career path, or you're still kind of just seeing how it goes and learning along the way?
So I think for a long time, in the past 10 years, for example, I just kind of went along with it because, I felt this is something that I can do. I have shown that in my workplace that I can do this job. It was challenging. I don't enjoy all of it 100%. But I used to find, I guess, different reasons or justification on why I would continue on with that particular career path. Part of it sometimes were thinking, well, it's better than other industries where, you don't get paid a lot, for example, and, the work is even more complex or just not my thing. So I kind of settled into that a little bit. Then I justify, well, even though it's not something that I'm super passionate about, it pays the bills, it's something that I can put up with. So that was my rationale for a long time. So for me, something happened in my family last year. I lost a family member, and throughout that time, it was very revealing, I would say, because even the month before that happened, I was still working. I was working a lot. So when everything came to a halt, at that stage, I really dug deep to question what I'm doing with my life. Because when something like that happens, you realize that life is short. You really have no idea when you might go at any time. Even if it's scary, it's worth to take a punt and take a risk on things that you were afraid of doing before, and deviating from your status quo, because it would be totally safe for me and stable for me to continue on my current trajectory in tech. Pays well. I'm familiar with what goes on in the industry, what kind of roles there, and where I fit in. It'll be really safe to do that. However, over time, I do need something else in my life that makes me feel super connected to, which is why I've doubled down on my freediving. It's starting to evolve more than a little passion, a little hobby, to me actually going, wow, I can talk about this to others and help them realize that the ocean and going to those depths and those long breath hold times is not as scary as it is. If I can, it's like if I can do it, you can do it too. Because I was a total klutz in the beginning. I didn't even dive down properly. I would do a somersault at the surface. I couldn't even go down. So if I can do, you can do it too. So that's something that I am currently actively looking into to get the next certifications that I need, to start working in this industry, whether that's kind of over the weekends. So kind of seeing how that plays out overall. But yeah, that's where I am right now.
I mean, I'm not like speechless, but I'm a little bit speechless because I think it's truly a luxury for people like us to have a very stable job that pays well. And therefore, we actually even have the time and space to think about what else is there and what more can we do. And you hear like cliche things like, oh, if you do a job that's your passion, you'll never work a day and stuff. And the truth is, like, not many people get to actually experience that because they don't have that privilege. So the fact that like we have the ability to pivot in a way that, hey, this is my passion. I'm going to possibly walk away from something very stable because it's rare.
Yep, 100% agree, and definitely recognize that I am in a lucky position per se that I can, navigate this sort of changes in what I want to do with my life. I'm single, I have no kids. It's so much easier to do that. I don't have huge financial burdens to the point where I definitely must stay in my current role. So I think you're right in saying that it is a calculated risk for others doing that. I don't think it's the right thing to say. Just follow your passion and everything will follow. Don't do it blindly.
Yeah.
Even for me, even though I have that safety net with all these savings that I built over my tech career, it's still kind of scary, kind of trying to think about the next 5 or 10 years, where my career will go with that, because now I found that, oh, I do have huge passion for this. Is this something that will eventuate into my next career or my second career? I don't know. Um, but yeah, it's even scary to think about that at the moment. The but is I've seen others do it and navigate those changes in their career. So it's quite comforting to know that there are other people out there who struggle with the same things. I think the whole storyline here is that for most of my life I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I got lucky, in a sense, and started in the career path that I did. I just continued, and over time just tried different things and found something that I could latch onto that I genuinely feel very passionate about.
Yeah, that's excellent. Wow, I can't believe time flew, and sad to say, but we're coming to the end of the podcast. And I usually end by asking my guests this golden question, which is, will you ever consider moving back to Malaysia someday?
So for me, yes, that is an active consideration for me at the moment. How soon I want to do it? As I said, I lost a family member last year, and I think part of that was really thinking about what I'm doing living here overseas by myself. I do have a great life. I've managed to find out and learn more about myself through this journey. But I'm coming full circle from from my 20s when I was going, nah, I don't want to go home. This whole amazing new world out there is fantastic. I want to continue living my life overseas. And now just really thinking that actually, my family's in Malaysia. Malaysia's, really good food, good culture. I still have friends over there, and every time I go back, it always feels so welcoming, and it just generally feels, it is my first home and still feels like my home. So one thing I do know is that I want to spend, my later years in Malaysia. So that's, kind of the end goal, and then how I get there and when is still a little bit up for debate.
Yeah, that's nice. I will say that one thing though, Australia is pretty close to Malaysia. I guess as long as you can do your free diving in Malaysia, right? That's gonna be a requirement, which means you'll have to move to like Terengganu or some island, or I have no idea where you would do this, but definitely not in KL.
Well, funnily enough, there is a free diving school in KL.
Oh,
They train at Lake. Although I've never been to one of those trainings, it's a to be determined, right? Yes, logically, a lot more of the diving will happen in Terengganu or East Malaysia. But some of these things that we do, you can also practice them in the pool, and there are other cities out there in the world that have deep pools that go to 30 meters. So
oh,
you do that sort of training there. So it is possible. So yeah, it's not kind of that's not stopping me. My freediving passion is not stopping me from returning to Malaysia, I'd say.
yeah, that's awesome. Janice, thanks so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story. Yeah, really, the fact that you just leaned in, into what life had to offer and just tried a bunch of different things and found something that you're so passionate about, which is so unique. So, yeah, just so happy for you.
All right. Thanks, Yoshni.